Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. I am not Tyler. I'm Eli.
And I'm Jesse.
And as you can tell from the shorter list of introductions there, Tyler is not with us this week. Unfortunately, he has some scheduling conflicts, and we just thought we needed to get something out. We needed to provide for you guys. I feel like we owe that to you. And so you've got the brothers Ginsburg here talking about some Orioles baseball. Jess, how you doing?
I'm good. Before we get into the Orioles specifically, though, I did just want to ask you, as a pitcher, how did you feel about Clayton Kershaw being taken out
Oh my
of a
God.
perfect game after seven innings pitched?
So I have a couple thoughts here. A, Kershaw himself did not seem to have a problem with it. And so that indicates to me that he genuinely was getting fatigued and et cetera, and all the excuses that they made up for taking him out might have been valid. B, I'm on the fan side of it, and I say there have been a lot of World Series won in MLB history, like more than 100, because there's one every year. There have been 23 perfect games, and we're in a situation where, because of the rarity of a perfect game, and it's only going to get more rare as pitchers less and less frequently are throwing complete games. I think it's a situation where you have to just protect every opportunity to throw a perfect game, and I want them to go for it at all times. And quite frankly, Clayton Kershaw is a major league pitcher. He can throw 100 pitches. I understand being, conservative with things, but quite frankly, he's at 80 pitches through 7 innings. If he throws another 25, 30 pitches to get the last 2 innings, that's not going to have an impact on his duration throughout the course of the season. You throw
Yeah,
him only 5 innings next time, whatever.
I mean, that's basically my point on it, is that, right, Clayton Kershaw throws thousands of pitches in a single season, and in the grand scheme of things, how much are these 30 really going to affect him? Let alone if he gives up a hit in the 8th inning on the first batter, you pull him immediately, and then the whole situation is averted, and Roberts isn't the bad guy for pulling him out of the game, right? Like the whole situation just goes away. But yeah, if he does throw the perfect game, just give him an extra day's rest. Figure out, bullpen that one game he would have pitched or something. Give him an extra day's rest, something. Figure it out. But yeah, 30 extra pitches, preventing the possibility of a perfect game to spare a pitcher, especially of Kershaw's caliber and at the point in his career that he's in, etc. He can handle an extra 30 pitches. That's my, how I feel about it. And yeah, it's kind of frustrating. Yeah, it's really frustrating. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like Roberts is one of the managers that will sometimes overthink a situation, and I think he's generally a more conservative manager. So I'm not surprised that he was the guy that ended up pulling Kershaw out in that situation. But yeah, go ahead.
Something really cool about that. So only twice in MLB history has a manager pulled a pitcher from a perfect game through 7 innings and less than 80 pitches, or 80 pitches or less, because Kershaw had 80.
And another was Dave Roberts.
It was Dave Roberts, right? And he pulled Rich Hill in 2016.
Right.
Yeah, it's wild.
That says something. I think that says a lot about. I mean, I like him as a manager. I think he's obviously doing great things with the Dodgers, but that doesn't mean I can't disagree with him.
Right, but Brandon Hyde would never.
Right, exactly.
I'm actually not convinced of that. The Orioles will never find themselves in a position where a pitcher's throwing a perfect game through 7.
Hey,
at least not this year. I'm sorry, not this year.
Right, not this year. But didn't I think Hyde actually didn't he pull someone from like a no-hitter through 6 or something? What am I thinking of? I thought you were actually referencing
I don't remember
something.
that.
Yeah. I am not remembering what it is exactly, but we'll have to like look up. Maybe we can like edit this or something. But yeah, I'm like pretty sure that I don't know. Maybe it was someone like
Oh
Watkins or
my
some.
God.
Was it Watkins?
April 1st, 2019, Orioles manager explains why he pulled pitcher David Hess from a no-hitter.
David Hess. Right. Okay. Yep.
Hyde pulled David Hess during the 7th inning against the Toronto Blue Jays, even though the pitcher had a no-hitter going. Brandon
Right.
Hyde's quote, "I let him go as far as I could let him go. It's the right thing long-term, obviously, for his health and the ball club, for everything. It's a 6-month season. To extend him way past where he should finish, in my opinion, wasn't smart."
So it was interesting because when you made that comment, I thought you were referencing that moment. I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I take it back. Brandon Hyde would.
right, exactly. So, yeah, and like, come on. I mean, they're talking about David Hess's like, I mean, David Hess, like, yeah, he's that was like, I guess his moment where he might have had some Orioles glory, and
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. I guess let's
Yeah,
and then
anyway.
and then of course the other just ridiculous thing was like Vlad Guerrero hitting 3 home runs and like pulling a 98 mile an hour
getting his hand stepped on.
Right, and like pulling a 98 mile an hour fastball like off the inside corner, over the fence and turning on it like it was, a high schooler throwing, a 75 mile an hour pitch or something. Right.
Yeah. I saw something that was the hardest and most inside pitch to ever be hit out for a home run in the StatCast era, of course.
Yeah.
It was like 98 miles an hour and like 4.5 inches off the inside corner or something like that. Just
unbelievable. Yeah,
thank goodness we have him to look forward to for the next 5 years in Toronto.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, we had our Manny Machado, while it happened, and I think we're about to have an Adley, so we'll have our glory soon enough, hopefully. But right now, it's not Vladdy Guerrero, and it's not on the major league roster. So yeah. Anyway, all right.
So our Baltimore Orioles should say we're recording this on April 15th on Thursday. No, it's gosh, I'm crazy. April 15th is Friday. And we are recording this before the start of the Orioles game tonight against the Yankees. But we will probably be releasing it on Monday. So we are giving the most updated information that we have, of course. So currently the Orioles are 1-5. We got swept in Tampa Bay and then proceeded to take the home opener against Milwaukee and then proceeded to win nothing else. So I don't know, Jess, how you feeling so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprising start. I mean, the Orioles were somewhat unfortunate to come right out of the gate playing like 2 very, very good teams. So, I mean, if we didn't make predictions, but if we had made predictions, I think I would have probably guessed somewhere right around 1-5 at this point in the season, having looked at our schedule. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully, and as you mentioned, it doesn't get any easier because tonight we play the Yankees, which, will also be a tough matchup for us, even though we will be home. So that's something. But, I mean, we were home against Milwaukee, of course. But, yeah, so no, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the one thing I will say, though, about the start of the season so far is that even though the club has done poorly overall as a club, there have been some bright spots that have warranted some excitement. So that is exciting. So
yeah, I'm really in the same spot. I think, obviously we played two good teams. I do not think there's any reason to start sounding alarm bells. We knew the Orioles were going to be bad, and we knew that the Rays and the Brewers were going to be pretty good. I guess one thing that folks have been queuing in on is just kind of in general, the offense has been struggling a bit. We're averaging like 2 runs a game. Everybody and their mother is queuing in on the runners in scoring position issue. The Orioles are 6 for 55 as it stands right now with runners in scoring position, good for a 0.91 average, and that is worse than the majors. Shortly behind us are the Miami Marlins and the Arizona Diamondbacks at 108. So we're the only team hitting less than 100 with runners in scoring position. Is that like, I don't know. Are you worried about that?
Not exactly. I think the number is reflective, one, of the good pitching staffs by Milwaukee and by Tampa. But I think the bigger problem that it reflects is the inability of the Orioles to hit situationally. And I think that's kind of the big problem that and I think it's going to continue to be a problem throughout the rest of the year. Obviously, I think the Orioles will hit better than that average, but I mean, teams that most of the time, right? Like the average with runners in scoring position should not be worse than just your regular betting average. Like generally there shouldn't be a big reason for that. So, obviously it'll moderate out a bit as the season continues and it won't be a big problem. But the teams that do better and hit better with runners in scoring position, one, are not teams that are pressing, not hitters that are pressing at the plate, and two, that know how to hit situationally and know how to take advantage of runners being held on base, and look for pitches in certain zones, right, to be able to hit the ball the other way or to be able to find a hole, stuff like that. And the Orioles just generally as a team don't do that. But we knew we weren't going to do that. I mean, if you look at our lineup and roster construction, we have guys that are generally like dead pull hitters. I mean, not the whole lineup 1 through 9, but, especially at the heart of the order, these are guys that are not, they're built mainly for power and they're not, great situational hitters. So I kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if to some extent the Orioles struggle with runners in scoring position through the rest of the year. But obviously, or if the Orioles don't capitalize on a bunch of opportunities, the strikeouts is also, of course, a giant factor going into this, that the Orioles are going to strike out a lot this year. So, I mean, am I concerned? I mean, it's kind of a problem that I knew and thought the Orioles would have. Obviously, it's not going to be this bad the entire season, but I mean, concerned. I mean, it's just, what I expected to be. So,
yeah, I'm with you on all fronts there. I will follow up on the strikeouts thing. The Orioles do have 28 strikeouts out of these 55 at-bats, which, if you're doing the math at home, is more than half of these at-bats we are striking out. So it's not great. But like Jesse said, this is not, this isn't a whole team of like JD Martinez and Joey Votto, like just veteran hitters that go up there knowing what they're looking for in every situation. It's a, young, relatively inexperienced group of, offensive core. I'm not sure I necessarily agree on like pull hitter, because we definitely, I mean, Mancini is kind of a right center field gap kind of guy. Santander can go the other way at times. So we can spray it a little bit in the heart of the order, but I think that the larger thing to me is, as you said, I mean, the Rays and the Brewers are two of the most elite pitching staffs in the game. And, everyone cued in on the game that we lost by a run to the Brewers. We had a leadoff double by Odor, I think it was. And then Devin Williams sits down 3 guys in a row. And it's like, well, that is what Devin Williams does. He throws a changeup with 3,000 RPMs. Like, Pitching Ninja calls it the airbender. He's got ridiculous, incredibly gross stuff. And then Josh Hader comes in and does the same thing in the 9th. It's a situation where, these are not guys that the Orioles ever see. And so there's much less scouting information because there's been, quite frankly, like less time interacting with these players. You get somebody on, and then Corbin Burns is throwing his 96-mile-an-hour cutter. And it's like, well, yeah, he won the Cy Young Award last year. And the Rays are the Rays. So I look at this, and yes, it's been a struggle. I'm not arguing that. But regardless of that, I don't think there's necessarily anything to be too caught up in. Runners in scoring position and kind of overall, like the quote unquote clutch factor has sort of been something that's going away as we spend more time crunching numbers in baseball these days. There are a lot of arguments to be made that clutch is sort of a figmentation of people's imagination. Your lineup is just constructed such that you get people on base for your best hitter, and your best hitter will convert more often than not. So there are all these semantics in the argument, but regardless of that, we do have some positives to cue in on. The 2 we wrote down, Mountcastle and Santander. I think Santander is the more interesting case. Everyone kind of expected Mountcastle to be here and be performing. So, Jess, what are you seeing from Anthony Santander here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the patience is what stands out, right? I mean, historically, he's been more or less a free swinger. So, the plate discipline is just so exciting to see. And it's really, I think the plate discipline is really, the last step he needs to sort of transform as a hitter, right? We know he has the Go ahead.
He needs health.
Right, exactly. Well, of course, right. But in terms of actually being a hitter, right? He needs to really, like, how he can elevate his game is being more selective, knowing what pitches he's looking for, and waiting for pitches that he can hit, because we know he has power. We know in terms of actually hitting, we know he has a lot of skill and a lot of ability, right? So yeah, I mean, him coming into his own, him finding plate discipline and being selective, and having just an overall better approach at the plate is really, I think, how he can go from being a solid hitter to being a really, like, a great hitter, right? And I definitely think he has that in him to really be a great hitter. So yeah, the plate discipline is obviously the big thing that stands out. That's, of course, been reflected in his walks this year, which he's been accruing steadily. So yeah, I mean, I think that's been good. And I think also overall, it's nice he's been hitting third in the order. So he has some protection behind him. In the past, a lot of times he's hit fifth. And, I don't want to look too much into that, but, the added protection behind him might also be playing a role. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the thing that I want to mention is, in 2020, we saw in Anthony Santander that, had a 575 slugging. And granted, this was the shortened season, and he only made it through, it was something like 35 games of that or whatever before he got hurt. But we saw a version of Anthony Santander that really had a pretty elite batted ball profile. He was hitting the ball hard. I saw his max exit velo that year was 113. he really does have a lot of potential as a complete overall hitter, and the ability to switch hit makes him a pretty potent weapon in the center of a lineup. I, I really, really, like everybody has called for Santander trades over the last few years. I am a believer in him, and I think that if we can just keep him healthy this year, that he really could turn into something pretty valuable, whether it be as a trade chip or, as a piece moving forward. There's a reason that this guy was picked up by the Orioles. We picked him up as a Rule 5 pick, and he had never played above like high A. He had never even played Double-A ball. And we just stashed him because he was hurt, and we knew we could like force him through a year with some IL stints, and then we could get him the development he needed. That's because the Orioles saw, from the time that he was super, super young, that this was a special talent. And I'm still a believer in Anthony Santander. I think, the defense is not great, and it will continue to not be that. But he did lose a bunch of weight this year. And I mentioned the defense because I'm not saying I expect him to get faster or anything, but my hope is that having lost 20, 25 pounds or so, like Jim Palmer said he did, that will help him stay a little bit leaner, help him really focus on his health this year, stay a bit more flexible, and hopefully just have a little less strain as he moves around the field. I'm very hopeful for Santander. I think that, as you said, Jess, the plate discipline is really a game changer for him as well. I think being able to draw walks so I guess I can say this. In that 2020 season, when he had the 575 slugging, his OBP was right around league average at like 315. So, it's really like never been a part of his game. As a matter of fact, that 315 OBP was the highest of his career. And right now his OBP is 609. So he's clearly turned a huge corner through these first 6 games. Not just joking. Okay, so let's move on here. I wanted to cue in on the bullpen. I have loved every second of this bullpen, and that's a good thing and a bad thing because there have been too many seconds of the bullpen. We'll get to the starting pitching later, but we're seeing a lot of innings out of the pen, and really we're seeing a lot of success out of the pen. There have been some good things. I'm going to get the bad out of the way first. We have seen Jorge Lopez struggle in a couple outings now. He is showing the 99 with sink that, everybody was like, oh my God, if you just convert him to a bullpen guy, this is what can happen. He is showing that. And he has this 4-pitch mix that really is so tantalizing as a potential short inning, relief option. Tell me what you're seeing from him, Jess. Do you think that he stays in that 9th inning role that we've seen him in? Do we think that he gets booted within the next week? What are you seeing on his long-term outlook?
Yeah. I think the thing with him, he seems to me a little too volatile to hold down the 9th inning role for an extended period of time. So I could see him even holding it for a month or two, but I'd be really surprised, but I'd be ecstatic if he held it down the whole year. Right. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think mechanically that he's going to run into issues. He's going to lose his command. And then I think Lopez is also one of the guys that kind of gets in his head too much, right? This is something that kind of always I feel like has followed him around, right? As a starting pitcher, as a relief pitcher, right? I mean, we had the thing with him where, he'd pitch 4 spectacular innings and then come out for the 5th and just totally unravel and fall apart, right? So I think that being the closer, having the closer role is just a whole bunch of added pressure onto that when, he's just expected to be the guy to shut it down, to be locked down. And honestly, he doesn't really have the command for that, right? He doesn't have the he's going to walk his share of guys, right? Having him hold down the closer role for an extended period of time, I think that would kind of like rely on him emerging into a new pitcher we haven't really seen yet. Yeah, so but I definitely think I don't want to be too pessimistic on him. I still do think that we can find a role for him, not only on the Orioles, but in the bullpen. I don't think he's a guy that the Orioles have to part ways with immediately or anything like that, right? Just having him be the closer for an extended period of time, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Are you still? We had both mentioned being on the Dylan Tate train as potential like team leader in saves by the end of this year. Are you still kind of on that train?
Yeah, I definitely like him a lot. And I like him a lot as the next in line to take over the closer role. Of course, it is tempting to just say that we should give Felix Bautista a try back there, which I guess we'll talk about. But I mean, this is his first time in the major leagues, right? So like even adding that pressure onto him probably doesn't make sense, even though it'd be really fun to experiment with. So yeah.
So all right. Before we get to Bautista, we're gonna talk about him. Don't you worry.
Okay, but yeah, we could talk about Tate. Yeah.
Well, I don't even need to talk about Tate in particular.
Okay.
The thing I want to ask is just how do you feel regarding whether the Orioles do establish a true closer this year? Do you think that's something we even really look to do? Do you think it's a coincidence that Lopez has gotten 2 opportunities? Or are we going by committee eventually?
Well, no, I mean, I think I feel like it was Brandon Hyde's plan to try Lopez out in the role and to see what happens, right? I don't think that he necessarily felt like he wanted this to work out all year, but I thought his early thinking on the matter was, we're going to let Lopez try this out and see how this works. I think also part of that is that they know that he has so much potential. So I feel like in their minds, they were thinking, okay, well, this is how we can maximize his value, right? If we can show that he's able to be an effective closer, this is really how we can turn his current value into a lot of value, right? So I think that's kind of where the thinking was at with that. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Just to like run over a couple pitch metrics here with Lopez. I mean, what the Orioles are seeing so if you look at like his vertical and horizontal movement on Baseball Savant for this year, there is no blue on any movement anywhere, which means he has average or above average movement in all directions on all of his pitches, which is a very, very rare thing. And, whether that will totally keep up throughout the course of the year, obviously there are fluctuations in your stuff as the year goes on. But, he's throwing this sinker at 98 miles an hour. It's moving over 2 inches further horizontally than the average pitch at that speed. He's throwing a curveball that drops 6 more inches and has 2 more inches of horizontal movement than the average curveball. I mean, he definitely like has these tantalizing pitches. And I agree. I think this was Hyde's plan to work him into that role and see if it would translate. I personally am on the side of, I don't think the Orioles even try to establish a closer this year. I think it will be entirely by committee, by situation. But similar to the way he was working Sulcer in early 2020, I think this was a means of trying to figure out, will this guy be effective here? Whether it's to like maximize his value or to just keep maximum flexibility in the bullpen, understanding that the quote unquote by committee closer is, inclusive of everyone in your bullpen. You're just trying to figure out who will fit there as you move along. I definitely like, you look and he's like in the 11th percentile for or 26th percentile for walk percentage. Is in the 11th percentile for hard hit percentage is the other thing I wanted to throw out there. He definitely is not getting squared up, and this is self-inflicted damage, which he needs to get corrected. I get, the high octane arm coming in, throwing 99 is what everyone talks about as a reliever, but yeah, he needs to settle it down a little bit and kind of figure out how he can find a balance between, being a pitchability and command guy versus the high octane arm that he is trying to turn into in the bullpen.
Right.
But,
and just to what you're saying, I do agree that it's unlikely the Orioles find a closer that is just going to be permanent, right? I mean, I think Tate would really, I know there was some discussion about Crable doing it, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a couple opportunities. But yeah, as far as like with Tate, right? This is kind of another guy where, he runs into command issues from time to time. And right, like I think Lopez and Tate kind of are guys you end up putting back there, when things are going well for them and when, they're pitching well. But then when things fall apart, it's not going to make sense, in my mind at least, to keep running them out there and be like, okay, well, they had a bad day yesterday, but, they're going to have a short memory and they're just going to have it put together today. It's like neither of those pitchers seem like that. They have that sort of mentality. So, yeah, I definitely think it's going to be predominantly a closer by committee thing, with mainly Crable and Lopez and Tate getting the bulk of the opportunities, and maybe Bautista gets a few of them too. But
really see Crable. I'm not sure I'm fully on the hype train with him. I think he's a middle relief guy. But you brought his name up again.
I was just gonna. The thing is, like, about Crable, right, he is like a middle relief guy, but I also think like Sulser is a middle relief guy, right? And I feel like the Orioles and Brandon Hyde are at this sort of like experimentation phase where they are really just going to be willing to just try a bunch of different guys and see what happens, right? So I would not be surprised if even these guys we think of as middle relief guys end up coming in the ninth inning, when we're ahead. So
well, yeah. So I guess I'll say Crable, like I don't anticipate that there's never a situation where he does where he gets in the ninth inning. But what on earth makes you say Sulser is not a ninth inning guy?
We tried it out and it didn't work. So
it didn't really work in 2020, but he was in every high leverage situation last year.
No, yeah, I get that. But he's not normally a guy that you would conceptualize as like closer material. He doesn't throw 97, 98, right? He throws strikes, he pounds the strike zone, which is important. But I don't think if you take the the best 30 closers in baseball, like I don't think and if you put Sulser in there an entire year or whatever, like I don't think he makes the cut. But yeah.
I don't know. He's got the high spin rate fastball that plays at the top of the zone. He does throw 94, 95. He's got the splitter and he's got a little slider that he mixes in.
Yeah.
I see him in high leverage situations, and I think the Orioles proved that with him last year. But we got to get to the thing that everybody wants to talk about, Jess.
Yeah, me included.
Yeah, this is the reason, really, it's the entire reason for doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And that is Felix Bautista.
Yeah.
So currently, I was really sad that I looked this up, and he's now number 2 in the Stuff Plus metric. But for those who don't know, Stuff Plus is a means of quantifying just velocity, like your release point in terms of arm angle and actually extension, how far down the mound you're getting. your vertical and horizontal movement, and it's a means of quantifying all of that and normalizing it to 100. So Felix Bautista is second in the major leagues with a 161 stuff plus rating. That means it is his stuff at a very like raw numeric level is 61% better than league average. And this is of every other pitcher. You know, you're going down the line and, you know, Aroldis Chapman is number 10, 20% worse. You know, Hunter Green throwing 102 is down there. Shohei Ohtani is down there. Everybody else on earth is worse than Felix Bautista. And that is except one guy. We're not going to talk about him. That's all I have to say. Jess, how exciting has this guy been?
I mean, he's beyond exciting, right? I mean, it's kind of shocking that the Orioles had him in the system, right? I mean, it's a question whether he would have even been on the major league roster this year had he not basically had to have been added to the 40-man roster to avoid being taken in a hypothetical Rule 5 draft. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing that, yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of surprised that he has not gotten more attention from the minors, being in the minors. He's gotten some, but yeah, I mean, as we can see, he's showing, I mean, he throws really hard. He throws downhill, and he has great, you know, he has a couple, you know, the slider is just looks ridiculous, you know, and the movement is just, you know, spectacular. So, I mean, I really feel confident that if he gets put in the right situations, that I think already, like, he is a guy that can put up good numbers this year, right? I don't think he's going to need, you know, a while to develop or at the major league level. I think like he's going to come in and he's going to have an immediate impact for the Orioles.
Yeah, so a couple things to throw out here. He definitely did kind of pop onto the scene last year. You know, he moved through 3 levels of the minor leagues.
Right.
And, you know, I don't want to say he surprised everybody, but definitely just caught everyone off guard.
Right.
And yeah, really like what makes this guy so elite, I guess he's listed he's listed on Baseball Savant at 6'5", 190. That's just, you know, outright not true. People are calling him 6'7", 280, 290. I mean, this is a big guy, and coming down the mound, he's got a fairly high release point. And even beyond that, he just excels in vertical movement everywhere he looks. You know, like you look at his 4-seamer, he's averaging 97.5 miles an hour, and it's got almost 3 more inches of rise on it than the average fastball. They call it a changeup on here. He throws a splitter, but it's dropping almost 5.5, or dropping more than 5.5 inches more than the average. The slider's dropping 6.5 inches more than average. I mean, he works up and down. And as somebody who is so unbelievably tall, that is really, really effective. You get pitches that, you know, you're releasing from, like, as tall as he is, you're releasing the ball 7 feet off the ground or so. And people have to track that and, you know, watch it staying up at your eye level at 100 miles an hour or diving down below your knees. I mean, it's really, really an effective mix. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, movement is great, right? But when movement is complemented by velocity, right, then, right, I mean, that is just a match that is so overpowering for a hitter. Yeah, I mean, trying to distinguish between, you know, the 89 mile an hour splitter or the 99 mile an hour fastball, I mean, that's a near impossible task for a hitter. Yeah, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. And so the other thing that I'll throw out here, it's just kind of an interesting note. He really, like, in terms of horizontal movement, is below average on all 3 of his pitches, which is kind of interesting to me. But, you know, when Jesse talks about like movement being coupled with velocity. I should throw out, for those who aren't like familiar with Baseball Savant and the StatCast and all the like information pages, these numbers that I'm throwing out in terms of versus average, like horizontal movement versus average, vertical movement versus average, those are all relative to pitches at a comparable velocity and extension, I believe, are the two. So, it's 2 inch, like the fastball is rising 2-3 inches more than other fastballs around 97 miles an hour, getting released 6 feet in front of home plate or in front of the rubber. But one other thing I will throw out that's kind of interesting about Bautista. So nowadays there's a concept of active spin. You're using your hand to impart some kind of spin on the ball, but then there's a quantification of actually how much spin that you put on it is contributing to movement, is contributing to the action that you're putting on it. And Felix Bautista's four-seam fastball has 100% active spin. So, everything that he puts into that is really, really contributing to the rise on that fastball. And that's really why you see it being so effective. Obviously he's going to be wild. He has given up some hits. Quite frankly, like he's given up some hard hits. He's only in in the 12th percentile in average exit velocity, 14th percentile in hard hit percentage. He's definitely getting hit a little bit, but as this gets refined, as the year goes on, I think we have a lot of good things to look forward to with Felix.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, and I think that, right, he's going to have to learn how to pitch in the major leagues, right? In the minors, he could probably just, he could blow guys away with that fastball, right? But now, the hitters are obviously a lot better, and he's going to have to figure out how to get these guys out, with, in addition, all the hitters have the advanced scouting and all this stuff minor leaguers don't get to take full advantage of. So, yeah,
definitely. One other person worth noting is Big Mike Baumann. Has come in, had a couple effective outings, some extended outings too, some multi-inning. Jess, what are you seeing out of him?
I mean, basically just everything that, we're excited about with him. He's throwing strikes. He throws hard. He has movement. Yeah, I mean, he's coming into relief roles, and he's really, really done a good job. So he's attacked hitters, which I know that's something that Brendan Hyde emphasizes a lot. Like mainly he wants relievers to come in and throw strikes. I mean, sounds very cliche or whatever, but yeah, I mean, so far he's come in, he's attacked the strike zone, and he's gotten outs. I don't think he's given up a run this year yet. So
has not yet.
Right. So no, he's looked very good. So and also the velocity is like where we would expect it to be. So it seems like he's already kind of he doesn't have to shake off he doesn't have to shake off any rust from like the off season or anything like that. Like he seems like he's prepared, and he's maybe not at mid-season form, but he's definitely pitching well. So
yeah. So to cue in on him throwing hard, averaged 93.6 last year on the fastball, now averaging 96.9. So definitely coming out of the gate throwing hard. One note I wanted to make was he, like, very similarly to Bautista, just excels with vertical movement and basically does nothing in terms of horizontal. But his four-seam fastball, more than 2 inches of hop beyond average. The curveball is dropping almost 9 inches more. He does have that big hammer that we've talked about. I definitely am excited to see what Baumann does. And I don't know. The interesting part here is whether we leave this as is, as a multi-inning weapon, or whether he gets some starts throughout the year. I don't know. How you feeling about that, Jess?
I'm definitely on the pro, give him a shot to start.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, because Right. I mean, first of all, we need it, right? As we're gonna like mention again, we desperately need it. And yeah, I mean, let's try it out. I mean, we can, once he gets stretched out, to the point where he, is able to throw, which he might be right now, right? At least a 4 inning start or a 5 inning start, right? Which is basically the Orioles threshold for a start. I mean, once he's in a position to be able to do that, then yeah, let's try it out. And we can always move him to the bullpen if it doesn't work. Right. But yeah, let's give him a few spot starts. Let's see how he does. He has the pitch mix to be able to be a starter. I really don't see any reason why Bauman can't start. So I don't know why we're kind of restricting him to this multi-inning, bullpen piece. Right. So.
Yeah. The only thing that I could say is, we definitely need multi-inning bullpen pieces this year. I do think I land on the same side, in the long run. You try to make somebody a starter until it can't work. It's what we're doing with Tyler Wells right now. It's what we've done with all 30 quadruple A guys that have been cycling in throughout the last year and a half. We're trying to keep them as starters and dropping them in the bullpen if needed.
Right. And it's not about this year, right? We want to see
Absolutely.
whether this guy can be a major league starter. So let's find out, right? Even if we don't have the nice, bullpen piece coming out, but even, from an argument of like this year, like our starting pitching is so thin that, right, like it might even make sense for this year, to have him be a starter if we're trying to like get the most wins this year, right? It might make sense to sacrifice the multi-inning bullpen piece that he is to have him start, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess we'll keep walking down that path. Starting pitching is a problem, Jesse.
Yeah.
It's like, did anybody see this coming?
Right. Even though the Orioles took our advice, or mainly your advice, and signed Jordan Lyles in the offseason, he was not a savior that just completely fixed the starting rotation.
Yeah. Jordan Lyles' first start was not good.
No.
That said, I still think there will be better times ahead.
Yeah.
But so for where we are right now, I cannot get over this. The Orioles called somebody up for a spot start for the 5th game of the season, Jesse.
Which is not even one round through the rotation.
Right.
Yeah.
It is a blatant admission that there's no plan for the 5th spot in the rotation. We are just going to wing it every 5 days. Thank goodness we have an extra 2 roster spots right now.
What's crazy about this is like before the season, I was contemplating, maybe the Orioles are going to do a 6-man rotation. I feel like this is a possibility. I don't think any of us envisioned a 4-man rotation.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a bold take. The Orioles are looking for innovative tactics at all fronts, and the 4-man rotation is clearly the latest iteration.
I mean, it's
insane.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah. So DJ Stewart gets sent down. I'm not sure that's actually all that worth talking about. I have said on this podcast before that I do not really envision DJ Stewart having a place on this team in the future. Right. But so DJ Stewart gets sent down. Spencer Watkins and Alexander Wells get called up. Watkins gets the start. Does not do that great. Bullpen comes in, shuts it down from there forward, but it's too little too late. I don't know. I guess, what are you looking at and seeing like the Orioles' overarching plan being here with this 5th spot? Is this going to happen every 5 days? Are we hopefully looking to get some of the bullpen arms that we've been talking about stretched out, maybe a Bauman, how are you seeing this unfolding? Or is Spencer Watkins going to come get shelled every 5th day?
It is a little unclear. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Watkins does make a few starts here, at least in the short term. I mean, I definitely think that Ballman, I think Bradish is definitely a guy that is waiting in the wings, right? I think everybody is talking about that. So I think, in a month or two, we're going to see Bradish get some of the starts, right? I think he's just going to be the 5 starter, right? Most likely. So, but yeah, I think in the meantime, right, we're going to have, I think it might be Watkins. I think Wells might get a couple starts. And I think also, yeah, and Ballman, of course, I think is also a contender, right? I would like to see Ballman get some starts, right? So, I mean, I think the one thing that does complicate this a little bit is the new rule about the pitchers only being able to be optioned 5 times in a year now, right? I mean, that's all players, but we're talking about the pitchers, right? So that actually, I think, does come into play with the Orioles, and it does make it a little harder because the Orioles can't just pull a guy up for a spot start and then immediately option him, without thinking twice about it, right? There are some considerations that some more long-term considerations that need to be accounted for when making a decision like that. I mean, how many times are you going to pull somebody up and then immediately send them back down when you can only do that 5 times, right?
Right.
And you're not even getting 2 starts out of them. You're just literally surviving the one day, right? So, yeah, I mean, we were saying this, I mean, Jordan Lyles in the offseason, in my mind, was not enough. I think the Orioles needed to go sign another pitcher. I get your concern about ending up blocking guys and stuff like that. I know you wanted some flexibility in the rotation, but I think one more starter would have been okay. But here we are, and already we're having problems. So.
Yeah. So I guess I'm glad you brought up the 5 option limit this year, because I actually wanted to mention the same thing as to why Spencer Watkins was the guy who got this start. And I think that, well, I guess for me, I think that the overarching plan here is, yes, I think Bradish comes up and I think we give him a full 1 or 2 month trial in the starting rotation. I think he just has the spot. I think he will be the guy, and we will just leave him there. And I think the Orioles are just trying to get through the first month. I don't know, really. It's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if they're playing service time games with a guy who's projected to be a number 4 or 5 starter in Bradish, he's a top 10 prospect for us. He's great. I'm not trying to diss the guy at all, but it's just not usually the level that you see service time manipulation at. So it was interesting to me. I'm not sure if the Orioles are playing those games or if there's genuinely something that they want to work on with him for a month or two. That said, I think that they're giving Spencer Watkins this start because they are more willing to burn his options and to have him go up and down than like maybe an Alexander Wells or a Zach Lowther or one of these guys that they might view as a more legitimate major league piece in the future, whether it be in the bullpen or in the starting rotation. Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me as to why Spencer Watkins would have the start over Alexander Wells, who was called up at the same time. And Wells hasn't pitched yet this year, but he is hanging out in the bullpen. Yeah, it's very interesting to me, but I think that in the end, yeah, the Orioles will, probably burn these options on Spencer Watkins or somebody like him, and then bring in Bradish to solidify a spot, and then have probably just one spot that's still rotating a bit between the Baumanns, the Lowthers, Wellses, Aikens,
Cramer.
all of those folks. So,
Right.
you got any other notes before we move on?
No, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, the really frustrating thing about it is we have all these guys in our system that you just mentioned that we want to see more of, and here we are like using innings for Spencer Watkins, so
Yeah,
it's
no arguments.
beyond frustrating.
Well, so Jess, lucky for you, a whole new spot in the rotation just opened up.
Right.
So unlucky for all of us, John Means is hitting the 10-day IL. He was removed after the 4th inning of his game on Tuesday against the Brewers with forearm tightness.
We were told for precautionary reasons.
Right. Everything is precautionary until they do an MRI and it shows that everything is torn horribly, right? In all seriousness, though, this is a little concerning. When you hear about forearm tightness, you are always a little bit concerned about that ulnar collateral ligament. I have had plenty of forearm tightness throughout my baseball career. It is a little bit concerning. John Means says he has never felt pain in that area before, or not pain, I'm sorry, tightness. He has never felt tightness in that area before. And he is somebody who's had injury concerns. We talked about, Jesse has talked about maximizing Means' trade value and him needing to have a healthy first half. This definitely, whether you're looking at John Means as a potential number 3 starter on a good Orioles team, or whether you're looking at him as trade bait this year, seeing him get hurt again sucks. He has struggled with injuries his whole career. He had 2 fairly good starts, and I was definitely looking forward to seeing what he was bringing this year. I don't know, not much to say, but how you feeling?
I mean, not good, and I think it's getting to a point where this is really going to severely. I mean, how can any team going to get him, feel confident that he's going to be able to stay healthy, right? When it's been so many years in a row that at some point he's been injured. He was out for weeks and weeks last year. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely concerning. And also just for him, I mean, this is not good. And I mean, I will say, there, as you're saying, there is a reason to be worried about forearm tightness, but certainly many pitchers have forearm tightness and then are fine, and it's not a problem, right? So it, who knows how how really bad this is gonna turn out, but I think that this is just kind of a thing with him that injuries, I feel like, are just going to be part of what a team has to accept if they have John Means on their team, and that is unfortunate. He's not particularly young at this point, right? So it just kind of feels like this is just part of how his career is going to go. And that's not to say like he isn't going to be able to play in the major leagues. He will, right? There are great players who have were riddled with injuries throughout their career. Ken Griffey Jr. comes to mind in particular, right? But it definitely damages your career, and it makes it harder for you. And of course, in terms of his trade value, that makes it tougher for the Orioles to sell him as like this is a reliable ace, or at least a reliable 2 that you can stash there, and he's going to give you 200 innings, and the Orioles can't really make that case. So yeah,
I like the Ken Griffey Jr. comparison. If John Means picks
right.
up a bat and swats 650 home runs,
right.
I think we're in a very good position here.
Right. Of course, people say, I mean, I will say though, like, I mean, we joke about that, but like we do, at least there, I think about how even more legendary Ken Griffey Jr.'s career could have been, had he not been injured for so much of it. Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, moving on. Um, we have talked about the Orioles losing an arm. Now we're going to talk about them giving some away. We have some catch up to play on the Tanner Scott and Cole Sulser trade to the Marlins. So just to recap it, the Orioles trade Tanner Scott and Cole Sulser to the Marlins. In return, we get Antonio Velez, a pitching prospect, Kevin Guerrero. I know less about Guerrero, so bear with me.
He's a center fielder.
Yeah, he is an outfielder. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So Kevin Guerrero, an outfielder. We get a player to be named later, and we get their competitive round B pick, which comes after the second round.
Yeah, for sure.
So, a few things here. I guess I can just give a little bit of info on these guys. So Guerrero is a 17-year-old outfielder. He's already 6'3", but apparently he's only 165 pounds according to MLB trade rumors. So definitely one of these young, toolsy, developing bodies. There is less information on him. He was part of the Dominican Summer League team for the Marlins last year, but has yet to come and break into like full season ball. Velez, on the other hand, he was if you guys remember, the 2020 draft was only 5 rounds. So he wasn't drafted in 2020, but signed as a, amateur free agent. Baseball America has said Velez has the best changeup and the best control of any pitcher in the Marlins farm system. He is currently pitching for Norfolk in the Orioles system. I'm going to double check that while Jesse speaks.
No, it's Bowie.
Is it Bowie? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So pitching for Bowie, had a good start though. Overall, we get those two guys, one who potentially could make an impact at the major league level this year, albeit a small one. He could come up for a spot start, a la Spencer Watkins. We get a guy who is toolsy and young, plenty of time to work with him. The Orioles clearly have a lot of confidence in their ability to develop hitters nowadays. You see us taking all hitters every single draft. So, the Orioles get a young, malleable piece that we think we have the ability to develop. We get an additional, early round pick and a player to be named later, which if you guys have seen anything about Matt Brash with the Mariners this year, he was a player to be named later and let me check back to this Stuff Plus chart here. Oh my gosh. All right, Jess, give us your thoughts. I can't find Matt Brash.
Yeah, kind of like you're saying, right? The Orioles are getting 2 players at very different stages in their careers. I think the idea with Velez is that, right? I actually would think that we are going to see him this year, playing for the Orioles. And I also wondered whether he might be a bullpen piece for the Orioles this year at some point. I know he's historically started, but I wonder if the Orioles are going to fit him in the pen. I wonder also if the Orioles kind of, to some small extent, thought that he might be able to replace some of the innings that Sulser and Scott, would be able to throw. But of course, I think what his impact, I think that's really not much of a consideration, just because they would be on pace to throw at least 120 innings combined, and he is probably gonna, if things go well,
less than 10.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I'm still I still think it's a good trade for the Orioles. I'm happy with it. It is kind of frustrating because especially with Scott, right? It feels like, you're kind of selling low on him a little bit. And there, he of course has so much potential. that the Orioles were never able to tap into or find with him, really. So, yeah, but I mean, I'm still happy with the return overall. I mean, I think, yeah, both of these, players, and the draft pick is also a really important. I mean, the draft pick might be the most important part of this trade, right? But yeah, overall, I'm happy about it. So
Yeah, agreed there. I think you're probably right that there's a very good chance that that comp round pick might be the most valuable piece that we get here. Um, Early round picks are, have a solid to high probability of turning out fairly well. And there's really no guarantee that Velez or Guerrero are ever going to play a major role at the major league level. So we'll see how it goes. Do you have any thoughts as to like whether the bullpen can absorb these blows? Obviously, we have the benefit of having seen this first week where the bullpen has been functioning pretty well. But do you think it's sustainable in the long term? Do you think that the Orioles are going to suffer as a result of not having these guys?
yeah, no, I don't think too much, honestly, right? I mean, I think the Orioles bullpen is mainly going to be the starting pitching is going to be the problem for the bullpen, right? So I think that's the main thing to be worried about, and the extra innings that the bullpen is going to have to take on because of that. But yeah, I mean, Sulser and Scott, both being back end guys for the Orioles bullpen. I mean, they're 1 inning guys for the most part. Sulser sometimes too, but I'm not too worried about the impact. And the Orioles have found, at least immediately, Perez. They found Crable, so they found some other pieces to slot in to kind of take their place, more or less. So, yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that this is a situation where the Orioles were dealing from a point of depth. We do not have much, but the bullpen still it's still shaping up to be a very good one. I think we do have multiple high leverage arms, Bautista and Bauman, like we talked about, Tate. Honestly, if Paul Fry comes back to anything like what he was in the first half of last year, that's a big win. CNL Perez has looked pretty good. He is wild as advertised, but it is what it is. I think that the Orioles can definitely absorb that blow. And I think, that was fully anticipated in making this move, that the Orioles were opening up some innings. We're not going to be able to fit everyone into the starting rotation this year. Quite frankly, we have about 10 pitchers that really need some looks at the major league level. So opens up 2 spots in the bullpen. We'll get to use that, and we will see how it goes.
How much of it do you think did have to do with like clearing roster space?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that was the intent, but I think it's an added benefit. What I'll say is that I think, like we have talked about, I think that prices for relievers usually go up around the trade deadline. And I think if the Orioles were really looking to, further maximize this, they could have held on to them until then. That said, I think that, the Orioles saw this as an opportunity with that, competitive balance pick, to potentially have some upside in this trade, at the same time to free up some innings for the plethora of arms that need to get some work. And I think it was like a convenient time to do it.
And 2 other quick things. One, what do you think of them being packaged together rather than being traded independently? And 2, what do you think of the Orioles trading so frequently with Miami?
I don't mind them being packaged together. I think that Scott has less value as an independent arm, just because of the struggles he has had. Sulser, on the other hand, I think is very valuable, but I'm not sure that either one of them is worth like a late second round, third round pick. So I think that the package together might have been able to really put us over the edge in terms of acquiring what is potentially that high level talent. And I think that Velez is a really, really solid depth piece. It seems like he is. I mean, control plays. He might not have great stuff, but the fact of the matter is that if you can keep the ball, where you are trying to throw it, your catchers and the analysts will be able to develop some kind of game plan for you to stay away from major damage. So I could definitely, I think he's a pretty, relatively low ceiling but high floor prospect, and that's valuable. So I think that packaging them together enabled us to get this level of return, and I'm not sure that like the combination of two trades of them individually would have done that.
Right. Yeah, the thing about Velez that stands out to me is, the whip. It was under 0.9 in 2021. So, I mean, obviously there's going to be it's minor leagues and, all those caveats, but that speaks to the pitchability thing that you're talking about, being able to, command and everything like that. So.
Absolutely. Okay. So moving on, couple little pieces here. Orioles re-signed Matt Harvey to a minor league deal. We are sending, we've got him down in the minors, stretching him out. It's assumed that he will eventually make it to the bigs this year. What do you think? How do you feel?
Well, here's another spot starter, potentially. Yeah, I mean, it's, there's nothing exciting about it. There's nothing, it's more or less a depressing move if he ever makes the major leagues. If he stays in the minors, fine, but we both know he's not going to, and he's going to be called up eventually for a spot start or something, if not more. Right. So yeah, not excited about it, and it kind of reflects where the Orioles are at. So
I hate it. Everything that came out this winter, during the Eric K trial, I think that Matt Harvey is, I don't know, clearly like there were some things that did not, look favorably upon him that were said. And I'm just really not sure how much value he actually contributes to our team. I don't fully get it. I think it's the Orioles looking for a bargain. Maybe he will turn into something, but like we said that last year too, and he had some bright moments, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I think it's a super, super low reward and just kind of a bummer, because it's a low potential reward and a bummer because of what we had seen from him, and dealing drugs the day before a teammate's death. Definitely, I just don't know like what the Orioles are doing here. I don't see the potential value in Matt Harvey. We've been talking about the need to be rotating pitchers into the rotation. If we potentially have 3 spots locked down for him, 1 locked down for Bruce Zimmerman probably, and then 1 for Tyler Wells, I mean, that's the full rotation.
Right.
So like Matt Harvey needs to stay in the minor leagues for me. Theoretically, if John means this turns into an extended absence, well, then even with the 4 that we just said, then you've only got 1 spot to be rotating people into. I don't see, unless we have 2 like long-term injuries, where there's a spot for Matt Harvey on the major league roster. And yeah, I mean, given that, I don't see there's any value in bringing that publicity into your clubhouse, right, and kind of bringing that attention. It's just, I don't understand the move at all.
I mean, you're kind of saying he's not a good enough player for that, right? Yeah. I mean, right. Yeah. I mean, and you're right, yeah, I mean, and I mean, this guy was our number 2 starter to begin the season last year, right? So I mean, I guess it's an improvement. He's now in the minors, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
All
no,
right,
but
oh,
oh
go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say it's exactly the thing the Orioles have been doing when the Orioles signed Wade Miley, when the Orioles signed Matt Harvey. It's like they signed these guys to minor league deals, hoping we did it with Felix Hernandez, right? Signing these minor league deals to these guys that are past their career, hoping that they turn it around and find something, and that is not a reasonable solution to like a gaping hole in the starting pitching. So
Well, but still, I mean, even if he does find something, where do you put him?
right.
Like if you put him in there, then you have to boot like Bruce Zimmerman or Tyler Wells, who we are trying to turn into like 4 or 5 starters. I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't know where he fits.
Right.
I don't know where he fits. And if you're trying to get Bradish up,
right,
like you're not going to prioritize Matt Harvey over Kyle Bradish,
right,
and then Grayson at the end of the year.
right.
It just,
but these, but as you said, the injuries could turn into a problem, and I mean, you never know how. I mean, yeah. I'm sure from their perspective, he's insurance, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Agreed there.
Yeah.
Okay. Last note here. Dean Cramer has strained his left oblique. He did it warming up in the pen, which was kind of interesting. He was going to be coming in to relieve Keegan Aiken, and they sat him back down. He has hit the 10-day IL, retroactive to April 8th. Oblique strains are notoriously finicky. They're super unclear on timeline. They're difficult to come back from, and they're very, very easy to re-aggravate. This, to me, I mean, I don't want to get too negative about it. I'm sure Dean Cramer will have more opportunities in the major league level, but this to me feels like a bit of a death blow to him. This was his time to try to reestablish himself as a potential major league piece after what was essentially a lost year last year. And this is just kind of like, I don't know, this is crushing to him. And the potential for him to miss a month, other people to establish themselves in these bullpen roles, potentially even as a starter, Tyler Wells to lock down a spot in the rotation, Keegan Aiken, et cetera, having a chance to lock down a spot in the rotation. I think this is a really, really tough blow to Dean Cramer. What are your thoughts, Jess?
I mean, I agree. You're right that like some of these guys might just jump and seize on an opportunity, and you just don't look back at a certain point, right? But I mean, I think it'll depend on how serious the injury is, how long he's actually out for, right? I think like the specifics on that will end up making a big deal. And I think it hurts his chances to start the most. But if he pitches well when he returns, I definitely don't think starting is out of the question for him if he pitches well when he returns. I think if he pitches well, the Orioles will find some opportunity for him, even if it's a small one. But let alone the bullpen, where I think if he's pitching well, the Orioles would definitely give him a shot in the bullpen. So
yeah, no arguments there.
I mean, I agree that it's definitely a giant setback for him, but I don't think all hope is lost for him at this point.
Right. Yeah, no arguments there. I think that there's obviously still potential. I think his path back to the picture that we all hold of the 2024 Orioles raising the World Series trophy, the path to Dean Cramer being in that picture and being on the parade and everything just got a little bit bumpier, but obviously hoping for the best for him. He throws 96 with a little bit of natural cut. I'm sure we will find a place for him as long as he comes back healthy and all. Agreed there.
Yeah.
Cool. You got any closing thoughts, Jess?
No, I mean, it'd be nice to beat the Yankees for a few games. That'd be really great to watch. But yeah, I mean, I think our, I don't think we're gonna be 500 this year at any point in this season. So,
Nor do I.
Yeah,
we're
1-5, and there's no coming back. So,
yeah. No, I think I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Definitely would feel good to beat the Yankees. This may come as a shock to some people in Baltimore, but I really don't like the Yankees.
No.
Yeah.
Us at the Warehouse Podcast have never really been big fans of the Yankees.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right, Jess. Well,
the one thing I will say about that, though, not that I like the Yankees, not at all, but on opening day, not the Orioles home opening day, but every day when I come home from work, I pass Yankee Stadium on the bus. So I did. They had just beaten the Red Sox, and I was passing through kind of as people were exiting the stadium. They beat them in extra innings, and I, kind of took note of it. The bus kind of did a little reroute because of the traffic and stuff like that. But yeah. So with me working in the Bronx now, I pass Yankee Stadium all the time now. So yeah,
just puts your hatred for them right in your face.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and that the just the outside of the stadium is just so unlike baseball stadium it's like, I don't know, it resembles more of a castle than a baseball stadium, and it's just it's kind of
a museum inside it.
Yeah, and I think it feels ugly on the outside. Just I don't know even what the material is, maybe stone, but yeah. So
yeah. All right. Well, Jesse's rolling his eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this has been the Warehouse Podcast. I forgot to say it at the top of the episode, but if you get the chance, please do, like the episode, subscribe, follow us. We are on Instagram and Twitter at the Warehouse Pod.
People can feel free to email us at the warehouse. People can feel free to email us thewarehousepod@gmail.com.
That is also true.
Yeah.
If you still use email.
Yes.
Cool. Well, this has been the Warehouse Podcast. We really appreciate you guys for sticking with us all this time. Till next time, I'm Eli.
I'm Jesse.
And we will see you soon.